There's a hashtag actually called Stop the Treaty, which has been trending around the world as people are rightly terrified, of course, of what it would mean for an unelected international power to tell you what to do. But we got some news today out of Brazil, right?
That's right. So Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro is saying that Brazil is independent. It does not want to be a part of this World Health Treaty, and it absolutely wants to keep autonomy to make decisions during any future pandemics. Now, recall that during the COVID pandemic, Brazil was one of the last to implement any social distancing, any mandatory lockdowns. Even vaccination rates were low because the president really was against these measures. And so he wants to maintain the authority to make decisions that he thinks is right for his country. And he's saying, no, thank you.
Não entra nessa. O Brasil é autônomo não entra nessa. Pode esquecer. Já falei com relações exteriores, tá? Essa proposta, se for para frente, não vai ser com o Brasil. Até porque eu fui o único chefe de Estado do mundo que não aderiu àquelas questões do lockdown. O único. Ele falava que tinha cuidado dos mais idosos e o pessoal com comorbidade. E hoje os estudos fora do Brasil em especial mostram que eu estava certo. E olha só. Qual estado que vai fechar no Brasil? São Paulo. São Paulo. Qual estado que morreu mais gente por 100 mil habitantes? São Paulo. Sinal que eu estava certo.
So pointing to his COVID handling there for lockdowns, he says, I'm the only statesman that didn't adhere to these lockdowns. And of course, there's a lot of people who think, well, first of all, I didn't elect the WHO. I don't know about you guys. I elected certain people. They're all pretty much suck, but I certainly didn't elect the World Health Organization to tell me what I can do with my family. And this is basically sovereign powers, Western sovereign powers saying, we're going to give over whatever you guys agree to among the World Health Organization, all of you elites, whatever you agree to, we'll just go along with it. However you want to implement lockdowns, whatever you want to do.
Because we think they did such a great job last time around. I mean, we're still not really done with COVID, right? In California, case numbers are doubling. But we can think back to recent memory in late 2019 when China said that COVID was not transmissible person to person, and the World Health Organization took their word for it and went public with that line and told the rest of us that COVID was not transmissible person to person. So, I mean, we can sort of list the failings of the World Health Organization. And this is just, it's like, well, then why would you choose this organization to give power to across borders?
Well, and it also, it's because they're saying we need to have their argument, let me just play devil's advocate, right?
Okay.
Their argument is that we need a unified front against the next pandemic. And by the way, they've already laid out, and it's pretty much interesting to look at their documents on when a next pandemic would hit. And if you actually look at the rundown of when it was predicted that another one would be announced or talked about, it lines up perfectly with right now. Because we're talking about monkeypox, which we'll get to in a few moments. So already we're hearing like, oh, the next pandemic is coming. Bill Gates just wrote a book about it, right? Bill Gates laid out a whole plan about it. And so they're saying we need a united front. It was too hodgepodge. You had certain countries doing certain things. You had Switzerland doing one thing. Then you had other countries doing other things. And it was just a mess. And then that's why you had just this hodgepodge response.
They want a united front, but again, not with Taiwan. Because Taiwan was excluded from this forum for the upcoming power grab plan, right, at the request of China. So the World Health Organization is doing whatever it is China wants. The World Health Organization was supposed to look into the origins of COVID, but when China told them, here's the data set we will give you. And
right.
The World Health Organization said, we'd like a little more. We don't think we had access to the sort of the earliest data set that you've got. Can we come in and open your books? China said, no, thank you. And they said, good, we're done here. Right?
Right.
So this is the organization we're trusting to prepare us for the next thing.
Yes, absolutely. The World Health Organization is the unelected body of people who are going to dictate our future. And again, I come back to Carol Roth's great book, which is The War on Small Business. And in the subtitle of that book is how the powerful, the rich and the powerful used the lockdowns to crush small businesses and, you know, basically destroy. I don't know. I'm maybe adding to
How
it.
the government used the pandemic to crush the backbone of America.
Okay. So close. I was close. But they did. And again, all we need to do is lay out to you how the rich and powerful, the Walmarts, the Targets, the Best Buy, all of the big companies, the big corporations were able to absorb so much of that pain. Most of them, of course, owned by Vanguard and BlackRock and all of these big hedge funds and these big institutions. So they could absorb this pain of a pandemic, right, by having their doors shut because they could go online. It didn't matter. But what it did do is it crushed all of these small businesses. All the backbones of all of these small businesses were just crushed because of lockdowns and these draconian rules that were put in place. And the rich and the elites could do just fine, and the people got crushed by it.
Well, the World Health Organization has as one of its major donors the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, right? So we know exactly who would benefit from these power grabs and who would not, right? So what does it matter if you hurt a shoe company or some kind of cobbler in a small market?
Right.
It really doesn't. Because you're not really, you're not collecting a lot of taxes from that person anyway, right? So it's
you know
a
how
wash.
you know how we help it's Small Business Saturday. That's how we save the world. I always love those things. You ever see like the Small Business Saturday?
Yeah, it's after Black Friday.
It's like one day a year. They're like, just go out and support your small businesses. Go to your local bookshop one time a year.
It
like,
really hurts Amazon.
That's going to really, really help those small businesses for like that one day.
Yeah.
You know, it's ridiculous. I'd love to know people's thoughts on this in the chat. Like, do you agree with what Brazil is doing here, what Bolsonaro is going to say and do, saying absolutely not, I'm voting against this. He will not sign onto the World Health Organization's pandemic treaty.
Well, think about hitching your wagon to the policy of China, right? Which has been pursuing this zero COVID policy.
Yeah.
So if your country was sort of in a binder with whatever China does, like everyone has to agree, there's no borders anymore to what global response is to a pandemic. So if they shut down for zero COVID, you're going to have to too. You're going to have to agree with rules in countries that you would never agree to the social contract otherwise.
Well, yeah, and that's what I was going to say is this sounds a lot to me like it would be as effective as the World Security Council. You know, like where you have two people with veto power that will veto literally everything the Security Council does, so they never do anything. It's a worthless entity because of that. So how is the World Health Organization going to be like, okay, the U.S. and Europe are going to do this, China's going to do this, Russia's going to do that, so let's all agree? It's never going to happen. It's a pointless exercise.
It's a good point. And also for some further historical context here, let's think about like the League of Nations, right? Woodrow Wilson, like pushing and pushing and pushing for the League of Nations, would get on trains and travel across the United States. And by the way, did you know Woodrow Wilson's favorite car was his electric car that he used to drive around Washington? So when people are like, electric cars, that's like a new thing. No, Woodrow Wilson drove electric cars, but the gasoline lobby got in the way of it. Anyway, he would go on whistle stop tours across the United States trying to push for this League of Nations, right? In the end, it failed. We never joined the League of Nations. It was a failure because we didn't want to give up our sovereignty. Mm-hmm. We didn't want to cede power to some like omnipotent body that was above the United States government. And that's exactly what we've done. That's exactly what we're doing with NATO. That's exactly what we're doing with, or that's what a lot of countries are doing with NATO. That's exactly what we're doing with the World Health Organization. So a lot of people, if you like live in Maine or you live in Texas, and you're like, no, I live in Texas. I vote for my Texas leaders. Why am I ceding power to some unelected body of pseudo doctors somewhere around the world?
But this is the exact archetype of the Davos man. Right? Mm-hmm. Is this sort of power grab type person for whom boundaries are like country boundaries are just sort of an inconvenience to be surmounted and are increasingly disappearing so that this power can be concentrated in a small unelected group. We're going to talk about this later, but like this is exactly it. Well, it's happening.
Yeah, it's happening.
The archetype is growing ahead.
Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. We've been banned, we've been blocked, we've been censored. That's why we started our own website, to stay connected with you for free.
That's right. So head on over to redacted.inc and make sure you're connected with us. You can sign up again at redacted.inc, not .com.